Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Cheap Marketplace 51, part 3. So, in our last video, we put the saw together with the cheap top end and the 028 Super Piston, and while the saw ran really strong, we didn't really pick up much for time. It was still slow, it didn't really want to make revs, and it was a little bit doggy off the throttle. So, I took it apart and measured out the cylinder. And if I look over here, I've got it written down. So my exhaust was at 110, the intake was at 75, and the transfers were at 130 with a blowdown of 20 degrees, I believe, if I calculated that right. An exhaust duration of 140 and an intake duration of 150. So I want to port this thing. Never done this before, and so I watched a lot of stuff on YouTube. I watched Bodie over at Empire Workshop. I watched Tin Man, the Tin Man saws. I watched Richard Flagg. He's got a lot of really good stuff. And Iron Horse and Charles Briscoe. And I wrote down a bunch of stuff, took a bunch of notes when they talked about, kind of where they run stuff and where's a good place, safe place to start. And I took it apart and started grinding on it. So once we were done cutting a cylinder, what we had was an exhaust of 102 with a duration of 156. An intake I left alone at 75. That seems to be a pretty good number from what I see and read and watch there on YouTube from other guys that do this. No idea, but I left it alone. It still has a duration of 150. And then the transfers came up to, still they were at 130 with a blowdown of 28 degrees. And some people say that's too much. Some people say that's right in the money. I don't have any idea. I don't know anything about blowdown other than I understand it's important to make sure that the exhaust pressure is out of the cylinder before the transfer opens. So I left it alone for this revision just to see what it did. Put it back together, and I did give it a 5-degree timing advance, although I don't think that did much for me. What it did do with the timing advance was made it harder to start cold. It was not that hard to start previously, so I think I'm going to go back to base timing. But with that the way it was and the way it finished out, the saw became much more responsive on throttle. It has way more power in the cut. We've got it running a 20-inch bar with 3/8 chain, just like our stock 55 build that we're using as a benchmark. And it pulls that with absolutely no problem in dry hardwood, and it pulls it full bar. I did some stuff, I ran it over 20 inches in oak, and it does slow down some. It had dropped to 8,600 in the cut, but it would cut that with no trouble whatsoever, which it previously wouldn't do with the 325 chain and an 18-inch bar. So overall, I'm pretty happy with where it is today. I'm going to do some more research and try to understand. This saw's got 196 pounds compression as it sits right now, which is more than it needs. So I think I can get away with dropping the exhaust, dropping the exhaust number by raising the roof. I think I can raise that up a little bit more, lose a little bit compression, and I think that'll make it a little snappier yet. I don't know if that helps the overall performance, but I think that's probably the next thing that I'm going to do. If you've got some ideas, or you've done this a million times, or you've got some thoughts on where we should go with it next, put it down in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts are. I respond to everybody that makes a comment on the video. I appreciate everybody's interaction with what I'm doing so far. This is just a fun thing that I kind of picked up as I was heating my house with wood. And I'm by no means an expert, but I want to do it. And so I'm just blundering through and making it happen. And hopefully, we've encouraged some people to try something like that. Maybe pick up a cheap saw, try some cheap parts, see what it does. At the end of the day, this is getting me to an idea or concept of what this 55 saw could take. And then in the future, we could put better parts once I have some machining ability, do some machine work with better parts to achieve the same thing for maybe some additional longevity. Who knows? We're going to go out and we're going to do some cuts. We're going to cut with this, and we're going to cut with the stock build. We'll time them out and compare them and see where they land out. All right, the much anticipated, at least for me anyway, comparison between a stock 55 build and the cheap China parts build. So we're going to start with the stock 55. If you remember, this has the OE 55 top end that I cleaned the transfer up on and a new piston put in. It's running a 20-inch bar, 3/8 chain, full chisel, just freshly sharpened. And so we're going to make 3 cuts with it, and we'll see what it does. And then we'll get the other saw, and we'll see what it does. All right, that's it for the stock. Now we'll try our hopped up cheap China parts saw. Well, that wasn't half bad. We'll get the numbers on it and we'll come back and talk about what we found.